The wrench, a tool of critical importance, became inexplicably rigid in the mechanic's grip, its rotation abruptly halted. The precise moment was 4:47 a.m. on July 15, 1943, and the scene was set in the chilly confines of a hangar at RAF Ballykelly, situated in the picturesque landscape of Northern Ireland. Chief Technician William Morrison, the central figure in this unfolding drama, found himself confronting a truly daunting predicament. Behind him, a formidable assembly of 40 consolidated B-24 Liberator bombers, each a colossal four-engine aircraft specifically engineered for the relentless pursuit of German U-boats lurking menacingly in the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, lay in various stages of profound dismemberment. A mere 18 of these formidable machines were deemed prepared for flight, while the remaining complement had been methodically dismantled for the purposes of scheduled preventive maintenance, a procedure that ironically appeared to be exacerbating the very problems it was designed to avert. Morrison, his hands grimy with the pervasive grease of his trade, meticulously cleansed them before consulting his meticulously kept logbook. The directive for Squadron 120 mandated the launch of 24 aircraft at the nascent light of dawn, tasked with the vital mission of anti-submarine patrol. He could, at best, provide them with 18. Perhaps, he mused, if the temperamental hydraulic system on Liberator FL-847 exhibited a rare moment of cooperation. If, by some stroke of fortune, the engine replacement on FL-92 could be brought to a swift conclusion within the next 60 minutes. The sheer weight of these conditional probabilities, these ifs, pressed down upon him with a crushing mathematical brutality. RAF Coastal Command, a pivotal operational unit, managed approximately 80 Liberators, distributed across two distinct squadrons, stationed at Ballykelly. Yet, on any given day during that pivotal July of 1943, fewer than 40 of these aircraft possessed the crucial capability to undertake a mission. The remainder languished in the depths of the maintenance cycle, subjected either to the routine 50-hour preventive checks or, more frequently, to emergency repairs necessitated by the very issues that arose after those supposed preventive interventions. It was a staggering reality. Half of the entire fleet remained grounded, immobile, and inert, while German U-boats, with chilling efficiency, navigated the treacherous expanse of the mid-Atlantic Gap, systematically sinking merchant vessels laden with vital provisions of food, essential fuel, and critical ammunition destined for the beleaguered shores of Britain. The statistical data presented a stark and deeply troubling tableau. From the months of January through June of 1943, U-boats had orchestrated the devastating sinking of an alarming 282 Allied merchant ships. This catastrophic loss amounted to a staggering 1.5 million tons of precious shipping, consigned irrevocably to the watery depths. Each individual Liberator represented a substantial investment, costing a formidable $140,000 and embodying months of meticulous production effort. Consequently, every single aircraft immobilized on the ground translated directly into one less hunter actively stalking the elusive submarines. The operational readiness rate, a critical metric of military effectiveness, hovered at a dismal 48%. This meant that for every 2 bombers meticulously constructed, one sat frustratingly idle and utterly useless within the confines of a hangar. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Morrison was intimately acquainted with the established protocol. In accordance with the stringent regulations set forth by the Air Ministry, every liberator, upon accumulating 50 hours of flight time, was mandated to undergo a comprehensive and exhaustive preventive maintenance regimen. This demanding procedure involved the meticulous removal and inspection of engines, the careful detachment and examination of control surfaces, the thorough flushing of hydraulic systems, and the rigorous testing of all electrical components. Ground crews working with diligent precision typically required 72 hours to meticulously complete this extensive checklist. Following this elaborate process, the aircraft was theoretically returned to active service. Yet in practice, this was rarely the case. Morrison's meticulously maintained logbooks unveiled a disconcerting and persistent pattern. Aircraft that had been inducted into the scheduled maintenance cycle frequently emerged with a greater number of operational issues than they had exhibited prior to their entry. New oil leaks, previously non-existent, would mysteriously appear. Engines that had purred smoothly just the day before would now inexplicably misfire. Radio failures on equipment that had just undergone rigorous inspection became a frustratingly common occurrence. Within a mere handful of days after completing a 50-hour check, these liberators would invariably find themselves returning to the hangar, plagued by a litany of squawks, sometimes a dozen entirely new malfunctions. What Morrison, and indeed what no one within the entirety of the RAF yet grasped, was a profound paradox. The true solution was not an increase in maintenance, but rather a strategic reduction. And remarkably, a civilian scientist, utterly devoid of any engineering credentials, was on the precipice of demonstrating this revolutionary insight. The profound belief in the efficacy of preventive maintenance was deeply ingrained in the year 1943. It represented an unwavering orthodoxy, a sacred gospel, an unquestioned doctrine. Aeronautical engineers, influential Air Ministry officials, and seasoned maintenance commanders all concurred with absolute certainty. Machines, they believed, exhibited predictable wear and tear. Components possessed finite operational lifespans. The sole viable method to avert catastrophic failures, they argued, lay in rigorous and systematically scheduled interventions. The underlying logic appeared to be irrefutable. An aircraft engine, after all, operated under conditions of extreme duress, subjected to searingly high temperatures, immense vibrations, and the corrosive effects of exhaust gases. Surely, they reasoned, regular and thorough inspection would preemptively identify problems before they escalated into unmanageable disasters. Surely, the systematic dismantling of machines, the meticulous cleaning of their constituent components, the precise measurement of tolerances, and the replacement of even marginally worn parts would undeniably prevent unforeseen failures. With every accumulation of 50 flying hours, the entire cycle would dutifully repeat itself. Ground crews, a hive of industrious activity, would swarm over the aircraft with the focused intensity of ants. They would meticulously drain the engine oil, examining it with discerning eyes for any telltale metallic particles. Spark plugs would be carefully removed, their electrode gaps precisely measured. Magnetos underwent rigorous testing, carburetors were meticulously adjusted, and valve clearances were scrupulously checked. The entire process was characterized by its thoroughness, its comprehensive nature. And yet, ironically, it was systematically eroding operational capability. By the advent of summer in 1943, the crisis had deepened considerably. RAF Coastal Command bore the weighty responsibility for the relentless hunt for U-boats operating in the treacherous waters of the eastern Atlantic and the expansive Bay of Biscay. The long-range Liberators, equipped with state-of-the-art ASV radar, represented the vanguard of anti-submarine warfare technology. However, radar-equipped aircraft confined to hangars, by their very nature, sank precisely 0 submarines. Air Chief Marshal Sir Philip Joubert, who had commanded Coastal Command until February 1943, found himself in repeated and often acrimonious clashes with the Air Ministry regarding the allocation of vital resources. "Give me more aircraft," he emphatically demanded. "We desperately require 120 VLR, very long-range, Liberators to effectively seal the perilous mid-Atlantic gap." The Air Ministry, in response, produced a deluge of studies, convened numerous committees, and issued a plethora of reports. They meticulously calculated production rates and debated the complex intricacies of shipping allocations. They engaged in protracted discussions regarding whether Coastal Command's urgent needs should take precedence over Bomber Command's strategic bombing campaign. Crucially, however, nobody dared to question whether the fundamental issue lay within the maintenance doctrine itself. The accumulation of failed solutions began to mount, much like the ever-increasing pile of maintenance discrepancy reports. Solution number 1 involved an attempt to augment ground crew staffing, the rationale being that an increased number of mechanics would ostensibly reduce turnaround times. The result, however, was counterintuitive. More hands engaged in dismantling aircraft did not translate into improved readiness. Instead, it merely created a greater number of opportunities for human error to manifest during the critical reassembly phase. Solution number 2 proposed the implementation of stricter quality control measures, adding additional inspection stages to ostensibly catch mistakes. The outcome was predictable. Maintenance procedures became even more protracted. Readiness rates, far from improving, remained stubbornly stagnant. Solution number 3 involved reducing the interval between preventive maintenance checks from 50 hours to a mere 40 hours, with the intention of catching problems at an earlier stage. The consequence, however, was that aircraft spent an even greater proportion of their time grounded. The purported cure in this instance proved to be more detrimental than the original affliction. Solution number 4 advocated for the creation of express maintenance schedules for urgent operational requirements, rushing critical aircraft through their checks. The inevitable result was that rushed work invariably generated a higher incidence of mistakes, leading to a multiplication of emergency repairs. Expert consensus, remarkably, remained unyielding. Professor J.B.S. Haldane, a distinguished scientific advisor to the Air Ministry, articulated this prevailing viewpoint. Mechanical reliability fundamentally derives from preventive intervention. The alternative, which involves passively waiting for failures to occur, inevitably invites catastrophe. The Royal Aeronautical Society, a venerable institution, published numerous papers meticulously detailing optimal inspection intervals. Engineering manuals, with their authoritative precision, specified torque values, clearance measurements, and replacement schedules down to the minutest bolt. In this climate of unwavering conviction, nobody, it seemed, even contemplated the radical notion of doing less. The stakes involved were monumentally high. German Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz commanded a formidable fleet of 300 operational U-boats. by the middle of 1943. His cunning wolf pack tactics involved the coordinated deployment of submarine groups to overwhelm and devastate Allied convoy escorts. In May 1943 alone, German submarines had succeeded in sinking a staggering 34 merchant ships. Every incremental percentage point improvement in U-boat effectiveness directly translated into a tragic increase in dead sailors and an incalculable loss of vital cargo. Britain, a nation heavily reliant on maritime trade, imported an astonishing 68 million tons of supplies annually, essential foodstuffs for its civilian population, critical oil for its vehicles, steel for its factories, and ammunition for its armies. Submarines posed an existential threat to this indispensable lifeline. Winston Churchill, reflecting on this perilous period, later famously wrote, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." Against this backdrop of profound national vulnerability, RAF Coastal Command desperately required its aircraft to be airborne, actively engaged in combat, rather than inertly confined to hangars. The underlying arithmetic was both straightforward and brutally unforgiving. 8 liberators airborne and diligently searching the expansive Bay of Biscay could effectively cover an area of 150,000 square miles per day. Conversely, 8 liberators grounded for maintenance covered precisely 0 square miles. U-boats, with their insidious stealth, could traverse the surface at a brisk 14 knots or submerge and travel at a still considerable 7 knots. Every hour devoid of air coverage afforded these submarines the invaluable opportunity to strategically reposition themselves, reload their deadly torpedoes, and launch fresh attacks. The maintenance crisis, far from being a mere inconvenience, represented a potent force multiplier for the enemy. And crucially, conventional wisdom, with its entrenched adherence to established norms, offered no viable solutions. Only one individual possessed the audacious courage to fundamentally challenge every preconceived notion. Conrad Hal Waddington was, by all conventional metrics, utterly unsuited for this particular role. He was, by profession, a developmental biologist, a paleontologist, and a geneticist, specializing in the intricate field of embryology. When the specter of war erupted in 1939, his academic pursuits centered on the profound question of how genes influenced physical development, a highly theoretical endeavor involving the study of fruit flies and the complexities of cellular differentiation. He possessed absolutely no practical experience with aircraft, held 0 engineering credentials, and had no discernible background in mechanical systems. He was 38 years old, a lean figure, bespectacled, and infinitely more comfortable immersed in the microscopic world of cellular structures than grappling with the tangible realities of machine tools. His esteemed laboratory at Cambridge University was dedicated to the esoteric realm of evolutionary biology. He had published scholarly papers bearing titles such as Canalization of Development and The Inheritance of Acquired Characters. He was, in essence, a scientist's scientist, brilliant in the realm of abstract theory, yet seemingly utterly unprepared for the immediate and pragmatic demands of military logistics. Nevertheless, in 1940, Patrick Blackett, a renowned physicist, a future Nobel laureate, and a pioneering figure in the nascent field of operational research, made the unconventional decision to recruit Waddington for RAF Coastal Command's Operational Research Section. Blackett possessed the foresight to look beyond conventional credentials. He sought minds that possessed an innate inclination to question deeply held assumptions, minds that could approach intractable problems from entirely unconventional and fresh perspectives. Waddington subsequently joined the Coastal Command Operational Research Section, CCS, in the latter part of 1940. His initial assignments were primarily focused on the critical areas of tactics and weapons effectiveness. He meticulously analyzed bombing runs conducted against U-boats. He precisely calculated the optimal depth charge settings for maximum impact. He assiduously studied various camouflage schemes. This groundbreaking work yielded astonishing results that consistently defied prevailing military conventional wisdom. When bombers, conventionally painted black, were deployed to hunt submarines under the cover of night, U-boat lookouts were consistently able to detect them at a range of 2,000 yards. Waddington, employing rigorous scientific methodology, conducted controlled tests utilizing different paint schemes. White bombers, remarkably, were able to close to a significantly reduced distance of 1,600 yards before detection. This represented a substantial 20% improvement in stealth, a factor that directly translated into a 30% increase in the success rate of attacks. Initially, commanders vehemently resisted the adoption of white aircraft. "Ridiculous," they scoffed. "They'll be visible for miles." However, Waddington, armed with irrefutable data, compelling evidence, and meticulous mathematical analysis, patiently presented his findings. Eventually, faced with such incontrovertible proof, they reluctantly relented. The subsequent result was a measurable and encouraging increase in U-boat sinkings. Before his most profound insight, Waddington had already demonstrated an exceptional capacity for analytical problem-solving, particularly regarding naval warfare. His initial efforts significantly impacted the ongoing battle against German U-boats. Previously established Royal Air Force doctrine mandated that depth charges detonated at a depth of 100 feet. However, Waddington meticulously examined hundreds of aerial attacks, observing that the vast majority of U-boats struck by aircraft were in the critical phase of crash diving, meaning they remained relatively close to the ocean's surface. Through careful calculations, he determined that the optimal detonation depth was, in fact, 25 feet. This finding immediately met with considerable resistance from commanders, who steadfastly adhered to the 100-foot specification, which had been determined by extensive engineering studies. Waddington, however, powerfully countered their objections with compelling operational data. Following an intense and often acrimonious debate, Coastal Command ultimately revised its doctrine. The subsequent outcomes were nothing short of astonishing, leaving many critics utterly staggered as U-boat destruction rates surged an incredible 7-fold. These significant early triumphs, rooted in his rigorous, data-driven approach, inadvertently laid the groundwork for Waddington's subsequent and even more impactful discovery. By the summer of 1943, specifically July, Waddington's sharp intellect was directed towards an equally pressing and debilitating issue: the pervasive problem of force readiness within the RAF. His attention focused on two critical Liberator squadrons stationed at Ballykelly, which collectively operated 40 aircraft. Disturbingly, on any given day, an average of only 20 of these vital long-range patrol bombers were deemed flight-ready, effectively grounding half of the entire fleet. The core impediment to operational capability was not a shortage of new aircraft from production lines, nor a lack of skilled pilots, nor even a deficit of precious aviation fuel. Instead, the insidious bottleneck, quietly crippling their offensive potential, was identified as maintenance itself. The paradox was striking. Resources were abundant, but the machines were not available for combat. Waddington, with his characteristic hands-on approach, embarked on a series of immersive walks along the flight line at RAF Ballykelly. He engaged directly with the unsung heroes of the operation, the ground crews, fostering genuine conversations rather than conducting formal, intimidating officer-to-mechanic interrogations. Chief Technician Morrison vividly articulated the exasperating and seemingly endless cycle they endured. An aircraft would arrive for its routine 50-hour maintenance, often in perfectly airworthy condition. They would diligently follow the prescribed checklist, meticulously disassembling components like the engines, inspecting every part, and then carefully reassembling the entire system. Yet, with frustrating predictability, within a mere 2 days, the same aircraft would return with a fresh litany of 6 new squawks. Unexpected defects, such as persistent oil leaks, critical radio failures, or disconcerting control surface vibrations that were conspicuously absent before the maintenance intervention. Other mechanics readily corroborated this baffling pattern. Squadron leader Robert Palmer, a pilot, offered a similar perspective from the cockpit. He recalled flying FL 847 on a Tuesday, describing it as a beautiful aircraft, smooth as silk. However, after it entered maintenance on Thursday, by Saturday, it was back on the line, plagued by a rough-running No. 3 engine and hydraulic pressure fluctuations, issues that were entirely unrelated to any part of the scheduled check. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Waddington absorbed every detail, posing insightful questions and diligently recording his observations in his characteristically meticulous handwriting. Then on July 19, 1943, a pivotal moment of intellectual clarity struck him, an insight that would irrevocably transform the future of aviation maintenance. He posed a revolutionary question, challenging the very bedrock of established engineering philosophy. What if the conventional wisdom of preventive maintenance was not the solution to mechanical reliability, but rather the fundamental problem? The setting for Waddington's groundbreaking analytical work was far from a sophisticated laboratory or a clandestine hangar filled with prototype machinery. Instead, his workshop was simply a commandeered office within the sprawling RAF Ballykelly complex. It was a modest room, furnished with utilitarian filing cabinets and a desk perpetually burdened with stacks of maintenance logs. His analytical instruments, by any conventional scientific measure, were remarkably crude, an assortment of pencils, sheets of graph paper, and an extensive collection of maintenance discrepancy reports, meticulously compiled over the preceding 6 months. His methodological approach, however, was anything but conventional, drawing unexpected inspiration from the fields of evolutionary biology, population analysis, statistical patterns, and survival curves. In essence, he was audaciously applying the principles of Darwinian analysis to the operational lifespan of Liberator aircraft. Collaborating closely with him was Cecil Gordon, a distinguished geneticist who had been specifically recruited to the Coastal Command Scientific Section, CCS. Together, this unconventional duo embarked on the painstaking task of collecting and analyzing data that, until then, no one else had considered valuable enough to scrutinize. For each of the 40 Liberator aircraft housed at Ballykelly, Waddington and Gordon systematically recorded a comprehensive array of data points. This included the precise number of flying hours accumulated since the last scheduled maintenance event, the frequency of unscheduled repairs required between these maintenance intervals, the specific types of failures that necessitated emergency fixes, and, crucially, the proportion of time each aircraft spent in a mission-capable state versus being grounded for repairs. The sheer volume and repetitive nature of this work rendered it exceptionally tedious and entirely unglamorous. They laboriously sifted through countless logbooks, deciphering the often hastily scrawled notes of mechanics, entries such as starboard outer oil pressure erratic, replaced gauge, or port landing, gear retraction, slow adjusted cable, tension, or radio compass inoperative, found loose connection. Each entry, no matter how minor, contributed to the colossal data set they were meticulously assembling. The culmination of this arduous data collection was a groundbreaking graph Waddington meticulously constructed, plotting the frequency of unscheduled repairs against the cumulative flying hours since the last scheduled maintenance. The pattern that dramatically emerged from this visualization was so startling, it reportedly made him momentarily cease breathing. The data unequivocally revealed a pronounced spike in unscheduled repairs immediately following each 50-hour maintenance event. In the critical first 5 flying hours post-maintenance, Liberator aircraft experienced an alarming average of 4.2 squawks, defects requiring immediate attention. Subsequently, the failure rate exhibited a steady and consistent decline. By the 40 flying hour mark, just before the next scheduled maintenance was due, the failure rate bottomed out at a remarkably low 0.8 squawks per 5 hours. Then, with the occurrence of the next scheduled maintenance, the entire counterintuitive spike repeated itself. This simple yet profound graph served as the crude, undeniable prototype, offering visual proof that, contrary to deeply entrenched belief, scheduled maintenance was actively increasing aircraft failures rather than preventing them. Reflecting on this startling discovery, Waddington meticulously documented his thoughts in his personal diary, articulating the profound implications of his findings. He noted with clear conviction that maintenance tends to increase breakdowns, and this can only be because it is doing positive harm by disturbing a relatively satisfactory state of affairs. He further observed a crucial second point. There is no sign that the rate of breakdown is beginning to increase again after the 40-50 flying hours when the aircraft is coming due for its next scheduled preventive maintenance event. This diary entry encapsulated the revolutionary nature of his insight. The very act of preventive maintenance was, in many cases, introducing instability into an otherwise stable system. The initial acid test of Waddington's radical hypothesis arrived on August 3, 1943, when he formally presented his findings to the station commander, Group Captain Harold Maguire. With the graph prominently displayed, Waddington precisely explained his methodology and delivered his astonishing conclusion. The long-standing practice of scheduled maintenance was, in fact, actively sabotaging operational readiness. Maguire, initially dumbfounded, stared intently at the compelling data. "You're saying we should do less maintenance?" he questioned, his disbelief palpable. Waddington calmly affirmed, "I'm saying the current interval is counterproductive. Every time we disassemble an aircraft, we inevitably introduce new failure modes. Time twos fasteners that are loosened and then retorqued never quite seat in precisely the same manner. Gaskets that are removed and subsequently replaced frequently develop leaks. Electrical connections that are disturbed during the process often create intermittent faults. McGuire struggled to find words, eventually exclaiming, That's illegal. Air Ministry regulations explicitly require 50-hour preventive maintenance. Waddington, unflinching, retorted, The regulations, as they stand, are killing our operational capability. McGuire, grappling with the enormity of the claim, responded, This is insane. You want me to instruct my maintenance officers to disregard official doctrine based on biological research? Yet Waddington possessed the irrefutable data, weeks of meticulously compiled numbers, and undeniable patterns that simply could not be dismissed. Confronted with such compelling evidence, McGuire made a courageous and pivotal decision, one that would resonate profoundly throughout the annals of aviation history. Write your recommendations, he instructed. A formal report. I will forward it through the proper channels. That report, officially marked secret and distributed to a carefully selected group of precisely 17 officers, ultimately became recognized as the most consequential maintenance document of the Second World War. The reverberations of this audacious report reached Air Ministry headquarters in London on August 17, 1943. It landed squarely on the desks of individuals who had dedicated their entire careers to meticulously crafting and upholding maintenance doctrine. Wing Commander Thomas Whitaker, the formidable director of aircraft maintenance, upon reviewing Waddington's revolutionary conclusions, immediately fired back a scathing memo. He declared unequivocally, This analysis fundamentally contradicts the core principles of mechanical reliability. The author possesses no engineering qualifications. His recommendations unequivocally endanger both aircraft and their crews. Group Captain Edmund Huddleston, a senior figure within the Air Ministry engineering branch, added his vehement objection, stating, Preventive maintenance exists precisely to prevent the catastrophic failures that random operation inevitably invites. Reducing maintenance intervals abandons proven safety protocols for untested theories. The chief engineer for the British Air Commission further dismissed Waddington's interdisciplinary approach, writing with disdain, Embryology may inform Mr. Waddington's understanding of fruit flies. It provides zero relevant expertise regarding radial engines operating at 2,700 RPM or hydraulic systems under 3,000 psi pressure. Consequently, Waddington's groundbreaking report was summarily labeled academically interesting, but operationally dangerous. The escalating confrontation reached its apex during a highly anticipated meeting convened on September 14, 1943, at Air Ministry headquarters. The room was packed with key figures, including Air Marshal John Slessor, the Commander-in-Chief of Coastal Command, Wing Commander Whitaker from the Aircraft Maintenance Group, Group Captain Huddleston from Engineering, Squadron Leader Waddington himself, representing the Coastal Command Scientific Section, CCS, Cecil Gordon, also from CCS, and Group Captain McGuire from RAF Ballykelly. As Waddington began to present his findings, a palpable tension settled over the room, the atmosphere growing noticeably colder. "You are proposing," Whitaker stated, his voice tight with barely contained incredulity, "that we extend maintenance intervals from 50 hours to what? 70, 80, 100? Waddington, unflustered, responded concisely, The data suggest that longer intervals would significantly improve readiness. Huddleston leaned forward, his tone sharp with skepticism. Based on merely 6 months of observations at a single station, involving 2 squadrons and only 40 aircraft, he continued addressing Waddington with a veneer of respect that barely masked his condescension. Mr. Waddington, with all due deference to your commendable work against U-boats, you are fundamentally misunderstanding mechanical systems. Unlike biological organisms, machines do not possess the capacity to heal themselves. They deteriorate predictably without preventive intervention. They fail catastrophically. Waddington, maintaining his composure, countered directly. That is precisely the assumption I am challenging. Biological systems and mechanical systems both exhibit. Before he could elaborate, the room erupted. Gordon, later recalling the chaotic scene in his unpublished notes, observed at least 3 senior officers speaking simultaneously. Whitaker vehemently declared Waddington's recommendations professionally irresponsible, while Huddleston branded them mathematically clever, but mechanically illiterate. Group Captain McGuire, however, steadfastly defended the integrity of the operational data. Air Marshal Slessor, throughout this tumultuous exchange, remained conspicuously silent, absorbing every argument. The crescendo of arguments against Waddington reached fever pitch. This violates every engineering textbook in existence. We will inevitably have engines failing mid-mission, tragically killing crews. Maintenance doctrine has been forged from decades of invaluable aviation experience. You are asking us to blindly trust biology over established engineering principles. In the midst of this heated opposition, voices also rose in Waddington's defense, highlighting the undeniable crisis at hand. The current system demonstrably does not work. We are operating with half our vital fleet grounded, one supporter argued. Another pointed to Waddington's undeniable track record. His previous recommendations concerning depth charges saved hundreds of lives. What if conventional wisdom, despite its long history, is fundamentally flawed? The data, after all, does not lie. These arguments underscored the desperate need for a solution and the credibility Waddington had earned through prior successes. Air Marshal Slessor, finally raising his hand, commanded immediate silence. The cacophony of voices ceased abruptly. He then addressed Wing Commander Whitaker directly. Wing Commander Whitaker, what is our current operational readiness rate for VLR Liberators? Whitaker, momentarily flustered, responded, 48%, sir, averaging across all coastal command stations. Slessor then turned his gaze to Squadron Leader Waddington. Squadron Leader Waddington, what does your meticulous analysis predict if we were to implement your recommendations? Waddington, with quiet confidence, stated, a readiness of 70 to 75% within 3 months, sir. Slessor then posed the ultimate high-stakes question. And if you are wrong, if engines fail, if aircraft crash as a result? Waddington's response was both pragmatic and unwavering. Then we simply return to current doctrine, sir. The discussion, which had seemingly grown heated, implied a previous question about a potentially rash decision. A voice, identified as Whitaker S., interjected, asserting that the existing mathematical models failed to adequately account for critical factors such as metal fatigue, the inevitable wear on bearings, or the accumulation of carbon within combustion chambers. Air Marshal Slessor, however, swiftly silenced him, declaring with gravity, Gentlemen, we are in the midst of losing the Battle of the Atlantic. He emphasized his urgent requirement for operational aircraft actively engaged in hunting submarines, rather than machines languishing in hangars undergoing maintenance that appeared to be superfluous. Slessor underscored his unwavering confidence in Mr. Waddington, whose impressive track record, particularly his influential depth charge recommendation, had already unequivocally validated the efficacy of operational research in his eyes. Directing his gaze towards Whitaker, Slessor announced his decision to sanction a rigorous controlled test. He explained that RAF Balakelly would be tasked with implementing the newly proposed maintenance protocols. The trial would meticulously monitor failure rates, the condition of the engines, and the structural integrity of the aircraft over a period of 3 months. Should operational readiness demonstrably improve without any compromise to safety, the program would then be expanded across the command. A profound silence descended upon the room. Whitaker, choosing his words carefully, voiced his apprehension. "Sir, you are putting both aircraft and their invaluable crews at considerable risk." Slessor, cutting him off once more, responded with resolute conviction, "I am wagering 40 aircraft at a single station on a hypothesis substantiated by compelling data, contrasting it with the absolute certainty that our current operational framework is failing." Approved. The revolutionary program commenced precisely on October 1, 1943, at the designated RAF Balakelly Station. Waddington's meticulously refined maintenance regimen was predicated upon 4 pivotal transformative elements. Firstly, it advocated for significantly extended maintenance intervals, moving from a standard 50 hours to a minimum of 80 hours, and even up to 100 hours when operational exigencies permitted. Secondly, it mandated the complete elimination of all preventive tasks that lacked any demonstrable benefit, thereby ceasing the practice of just in case, component replacements, or the unnecessary disassembly of systems exhibiting no symptoms of malfunction. Thirdly, the plan introduced vastly improved maintenance scheduling, meticulously coordinating ground crews to drastically minimize aircraft downtime whenever maintenance was genuinely required. Finally, it called for enhanced documentation, providing technical guidance that was clearer, more precise, and unequivocally detailed for the actual performance of maintenance procedures. Predictably, the ground mechanics reacted with profound skepticism, a sentiment that verged on outright insubordination. Chief Technician Morrison, gathering his crew, articulated their collective dismay, stating, "Extending these intervals is sheer madness. We will inevitably face engines seizing mid-flight." Nevertheless, despite their grave reservations, orders were orders. On that very same October 1st, Liberator FL-847, having accumulated 73 hours since its last major service, was dispatched on an anti-submarine patrol, instead of entering its previously scheduled maintenance bay. Morrison watched its silhouette vanish towards the vast expanse of the Atlantic, convinced he was inadvertently sending men to their untimely demise. Yet, to his astonishment and immense relief, FL-847 returned 8 hours later, reporting no malfunctions, no squawks, and no incidents whatsoever. By the 15th day of October, a truly astonishing array of data began to surface, painting a stark contrast between the old and new systems. Under the pre-Waddington system, observed between July and September 1943, the average operational readiness stood at a mere 48%. The command recorded an average of 312 unscheduled repairs each month, and each aircraft consumed an average of 86 maintenance man-hours monthly. Consequently, only 19 out of a fleet of 40 aircraft were typically available for critical missions. In stark contrast, the initial results from the Waddington system, spanning October 15th to 31st, revealed a dramatic improvement. Average operational readiness had surged to 60%. The projected average of unscheduled repairs per month plummeted to 178, and the average maintenance man-hours per aircraft per month dropped significantly to 52. Most critically, the number of aircraft available for missions had risen to 26 out of a slightly larger fleet of 47. The undeniable conclusion was that more aircraft were consistently available for deployment every single day. The ultimate combat validation arrived on November 2, 1943, when Squadron 120 received imperative orders for a maximum effort operation against German U-boat transit routes within the treacherous Bay of Biscay. Intelligence reports indicated that a formidable wolf pack was repositioning to launch an assault on Convoy 207, a vital lifeline transporting essential supplies to Allied forces meticulously preparing for the impending D-Day invasion. Under the antiquated maintenance system, Squadron 120 would have been capable of launching a maximum of 19 aircraft. However, thanks to Waddington's innovative system, an impressive contingent of 27 Liberators successfully took to the skies that morning. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Flight Lieutenant David Thompson skillfully piloted Liberator FL-912, his crew comprising Flying Officer Robert Hayes as co-pilot, Flight Sergeant James Murphy as navigator, Sergeant William Atkinson as radar operator, Sergeant Thomas Bradford as wireless operator, alongside 7 additional dedicated crew members. At precisely 9:47 hours, while patrolling 240 miles southwest of Land's End, Sergeant Atkinson's advanced centimetric radar detected a clear contact, a surfaced U-boat bearing 270 degrees at a range of 4 miles. Thompson immediately advanced the throttles. The 4 powerful Wright R-1820 radial engines that, under the old rigid doctrine, would have been undergoing maintenance, roared to their full, formidable power. FL-912 rapidly accelerated to a speed of 215 knots. The detected U-boat was identified as U-966, under the command of Oberleutnant Eckhard Wolf. His lookouts, though vigilant, spotted the approaching Liberator only when it was 2 miles away, a discovery made tragically too late. Wolf frantically screamed, "Alarm! Dive! Dive! Dive!" However, the Liberators possessed superior speed compared to the older Sunderland aircraft against which U-boat crews typically trained. Thompson expertly brought FL-912 screaming across the wavetops, flying at masthead height. At a distance of 400 yards, the bombardier released a salvo of 6 Torpex depth charges, precisely set to Waddington, earlier recommended depth of 25 feet. The formidable weapons perfectly bracketed U-966. Massive underwater explosions erupted, forcefully lifting the submarine stern clear of the water. Oil and debris violently spewed forth from the damaged vessel. U-966 wallowed helplessly, rendered incapable of submerging. Thompson circled for a second. Decisive attack. The U-boat, U-966, finally succumbed and sank at 10 south 3 hours. Tragically, 48 of its crew perished, while 3 survivors were later rescued by the Royal Navy corvette HMS Sunflower, approximately 6 hours after the sinking. On that very same momentous day, across the expansive stretch of the Bay of Biscay, other Allied aircraft were achieving similar triumphs. Liberator FL-823, expertly piloted by Flight Lieutenant Michael Barnes, successfully located and sank U-340, adding another significant victory to the Allied effort. Concurrently, Liberator FL-91, under the command of Squadron Leader Peter O'Brien, engaged and damaged U-271, forcing the enemy submarine to prematurely abort its patrol and withdraw from the operational area. Furthermore, Liberator FL-887, with Flight Lieutenant Charles Robinson at its controls, compelled U-618 to execute a frantic crash dive, thereby disrupting its attack position and neutralizing its immediate threat. In total, 4 U-boats were engaged through these critical aerial operations. 2 were definitively sunk, 1 suffered significant damage, and another had its mission decisively disrupted. All these decisive actions were executed by aircraft that, under the previous, more conservative maintenance doctrine, would have been grounded and undergoing routine service, highlighting the profound impact of the new operational protocols. The German submarine commanders operating in the Atlantic immediately registered the palpable shift in Allied air superiority. Kapitän Leutnant Herbert Werner, commanding U-415, meticulously recorded his observations in his logbook on November 18, 1943, noting, with grave concern, "Enemy air coverage has intensified dramatically. Where previously we might transit the bay with 1 or 2 sightings daily, we now face continuous patrol aircraft. The hunters have multiplied." This perception, however, was fundamentally flawed. The Allied aircraft had not actually multiplied in number. Instead, the critical difference lay in their operational status. They were simply airborne and actively engaged in patrols, rather than being confined to hangars, undergoing often unnecessary maintenance. By the close of December 31, 1943, the accumulated data rendered the effectiveness of the new protocols utterly undeniable. The readiness rates at RAF Ballykelly demonstrated a consistent and impressive upward trajectory. 64% in October 1943, climbing to 71% in November 1943, and reaching a remarkable 77% by December 1943. Simultaneously, Coastal Command, SL, U-boat kill rate, specifically the percentage of attacks resulting in sinkings, experienced a dramatic surge. While it stood at a mere 2.8% during the July-September 1943 period, it soared to an impressive 6.7% in the October-December 1943 quarter. The underlying logic was clear and compelling. A greater availability of operational aircraft directly translated into more extensive patrol hours, which in turn led to an increased number of U-boat contacts, ultimately culminating in a higher volume of successful sinkings. Recognizing the profound strategic advantage, Air Marshal Schlesser promptly ordered an immediate and widespread expansion of the program. By February 1944, Waddington's innovative maintenance protocols had been fully implemented across all Coastal Command stations. Their proven success led to further dissemination, and by April 1944 the system had been adopted by both Bomber Command and Fighter Command, extending its transformative impact across the Royal Air Force. The calculation of lives saved, a truly profound metric, can be derived through straightforward mathematics. Each additional operational aircraft generated an average of 0.3 U-boat sightings per month. Each of these sightings, in turn, yielded a 7% probability of successfully sinking the enemy submarine. U-boats, on average, launched 4.2 attacks on merchant ships during each patrol. These vital merchant ships typically carried an average of 6,300 tons of crucial cargo and were crewed by approximately 43 sailors. Waddington, This revolutionary system contributed an average of 18 additional aircraft to the daily operational strength across Coastal Command's 10 squadrons. This translates to a staggering impact: 18 aircraft multiplied by 0.3 sightings, further multiplied by a 6.7% kill rate, then by 4.2 prevented attacks, and finally by 43 crew members per ship. This robust calculation approximates to the preservation of 690 merchant sailors' lives each month, lives saved simply because liberators were actively hunting in the vast expanse of the ocean instead of being grounded in hangars. Extrapolating this figure over the remaining 17 months of the European War reveals an astonishing total of 11,730 lives spared. These were merchant sailors who, against all odds, were able to return to their families, vital cargo that successfully reached Britain, sustenance that fed civilian populations, and essential fuel that powered Allied armies, all made possible because one biologist dared to pose a simple yet profound question: what if we were doing too much maintenance? Remarkably, the fundamental principles of this system continue to be applied in modern aviation practices today, underscoring its enduring legacy. Following the cessation of hostilities on May 8, 1945, Waddington quietly returned to his academic pursuits at Cambridge University, resuming his specialized research in embryology. His wartime diary, a detailed account of his contributions, was published in 1946. However, it remained classified for decades, only seeing public release in 1973 under the title Operational Research in World War II, ISBN 023615463X. Throughout his life, Waddington consistently eschewed publicity and never sought to capitalize on his significant wartime achievements. When approached by journalists inquiring about his impactful work during the war, he humbly deflected praise, stating with characteristic modesty, "Many brilliant people contributed to operational research. I was merely one analyst among many. Nevertheless, the undeniable power of the numbers themselves eloquently narrates his extraordinary story." Waddington, his groundbreaking maintenance system, was comprehensively adopted across all commands of the Royal Air Force by August 1944. Its proven efficacy led to its implementation by the Royal Navy as Fleet Air Arm by October 1944, and it was subsequently shared with the United States Army Air Forces through a classified exchange program by December 1944. Across all these diverse implementations, the average improvement in operational readiness stood at an impressive 61%. Years later, in 1968, Stanley Nolan and Howard Heap, two astute engineers at United Airlines, independently stumbled upon Waddington's previously classified wartime reports. They were utterly astonished to discover that a biologist, working in 1943, had already identified and articulated the very same foundational principles that they were independently rediscovering a quarter of a century later. Nolan and Heap went on to develop reliability-centered maintenance, RCM, which has since become the cornerstone of modern aviation maintenance doctrine. RCM's core principles directly echoed Waddington's profound conclusions from 1943, that the majority of system failures are not primarily age-related, that excessive preventive maintenance can, paradoxically, induce failures, that condition-based monitoring offers superior effectiveness compared to rigid, fixed-interval overhauls, and that, for non-critical systems, a Weishi run-to-failure strategy is often the most optimal approach. Today, every commercial airliner, every military jet, and virtually every general aviation aircraft operating worldwide employs maintenance programs directly derived from Waddington's brilliant wartime innovation. When a Boeing 737 concludes a flight safely after accumulating 40,000 flight hours, it is, in essence, a testament to the enduring vision and ingenuity of Conrad Waddington. Every single one of the countless flight hours accumulated by modern aircraft owes an unquantifiable debt of gratitude to the pioneering work of Conrad Waddington. The transformation in aviation maintenance, particularly regarding operational readiness, is starkly illustrated by concrete data. In the 1960s, prior to the widespread adoption of reliability-centered maintenance (RCM) principles, operational readiness stood at a dismal 35%, meaning a significant majority of aircraft were not available for their intended missions. However, following the robust implementation of RCM strategies in the 1980s, this crucial metric soared to an impressive 92%. Today, in 2024, commercial aviation continues to benefit from these foundational insights, boasting an extraordinary 97% operational readiness, a testament to the enduring impact of Waddington's revolutionary approach. In a fitting tribute to his profound contributions, the Royal Air Force officially designated its primary intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance ISTAR hub as RAF Waddington, situated in Lincolnshire. While the physical base itself has roots stretching back before the tumultuous years of World War II, it has since become indelibly linked with the zenith of operational research innovation. Cecil Gordon, a close colleague and intellectual partner of Waddington, later reflected on their collaborative endeavors, articulating a core tenet of Waddington's philosophy. What Conrad taught me was to question every assumption, especially the ones everyone agrees upon. Gordon further underscored this by identifying the most dangerous phrase in any organization is, "That's how we've always done it," highlighting how unquestioned traditions can stifle progress and obscure more effective methodologies. This insight underscores the necessity of continuous scrutiny even of long-held practices. At this juncture, the presenter takes a moment to directly engage with the audience. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. We also invite you to write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic, fostering a community of shared insights. Conrad Hal Waddington concluded his remarkable life on July 26, 1975, at the age of 69. His posthumous recognition, as evidenced by his obituary in the venerable pages of the Times, predominantly highlighted his extensive and influential genetics research. Curiously, his pivotal contributions to wartime operational research were afforded a mere single paragraph, a testament to the prevailing academic focus of the era. Even more notably, the obituary made no mention whatsoever of his groundbreaking work in aircraft maintenance, an area where his insights would prove transformative. Yet, the true impact of his ideas was acutely felt by those on the ground, exemplified by Chief Technician William Morrison, a mechanic who was a first-hand observer of this unfolding revolution, and felt compelled to articulate his profound gratitude in a letter to Waddington in 1962. Morrison's heartfelt correspondence began with a humble query. "Sir, I don't know if you remember me from Ballykelly," before candidly admitting, "I'm the fellow who thought your maintenance ideas would kill us all." This initial skepticism, a natural human reaction to radical change, was unequivocally recanted. "I was wrong and you were right." Morrison, having dedicated 3 decades to service as an RAF maintenance chief, possessed an unparalleled perspective on the practical implications of Waddington's theories. He meticulously enumerated the tangible outcomes. Every aircraft that landed safely, every crew that came home, every mission that succeeded, part of that was your work. His letter culminated in a powerful acknowledgement that Waddington's contributions extended far beyond mere technical improvements, asserting, "You didn't just improve maintenance. You saved thousands of lives. Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you." This personal testimony serves as a powerful validation of Waddington's enduring legacy. The profound moral lesson emanating from Waddington's narrative continues to reverberate with undiminished force across the decades. True efficacy is not solely rooted in established expertise, but rather in irrefutable evidence. Similarly, the weight of academic credentials often pales in comparison to the incisive power of critical thinking. What is conventionally accepted as wisdom reveals itself to be nothing more than entrenched habit when confronted with contradictory empirical data. This compelling case demonstrates how a single scientist, equipped with the courage to systematically question deeply ingrained assumptions, achieved breakthroughs that eluded the collective efforts of numerous committees, stringent regulations, and even established expert consensus. Indeed, sometimes the most profoundly revolutionary act, capable of reshaping entire industries and saving countless lives, is simply to pose the audacious question, what if everyone's wrong?